Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Phil Hawkins from Pixel International, here to share ideas, to listen, and all of us, hopefully, to learn. One of the things on our WhatsApp group that has come up fairly frequently in terms of issues that you're concerned about is student behavior or behavior management. And so what we love to do with Pixel is we love to listen to what your challenges are, and then we go and search for good practice, good practical ideas that you can take away with you, that can challenge our thinking, that can give us some really kind of tools to do something a bit different. And then the idea is that you go off and experiment with it and talk with colleagues, share with colleagues, and get back to us with whether you've noticed any differences or not. So if you are watching this on the recording, you are really important too, and we would love to hear from you. So do connect through the WhatsApp group. So I'm just going to share my screen. We're going to go into a presentation. I'll be coming kind of backwards and forwards through it. So you should be able to see that our title today is behavior management. So we're going to start off by hearing from our colleagues on the call. I'm really grateful for your presence, about your lived experience of behavior in schools. Now, this could be your own experience when you were at school, but particularly as teachers, what's your lived experience? And I've got three areas that I'd like you to talk about. The first one is what are the major types of misbehavior that you come across day to day in school? All right, what are the biggest concerns? What causes the most problems to teachers in terms of behavior? The second part is, generally in schools, what consequences happen to children who misbehave? What are the punishments? What are the sanctions? What are the consequences that happen? All right. And then the third area I'd like you to talk about is, in your schools, what deterrents or what systems do you have that deliberately try to reduce the number of incidents of misbehavior that happens, for example, across a week? All right. So the types of misbehavior, the consequences, and the sort of systems that you might have in place to try and reduce challenging behavior. So I'm going to come back to our main screen. Also welcome Adolfina and Wilhard. So let me come first to Alpha. If you could unmute and just share from your perspective what kinds of misbehavior happens in class, what happens to children who do it, and what kind of systems do you have? Okay.
Thank you, Phil. The most misbehavior that I have been experiencing with my students in class, we have the tendency of some of the students running away from some of the subjects. This is relating to mathematics. And we have come to realize that because we teachers also, we do differ, and sometimes the students tend to run outside the class, maybe because of the approach that we teachers we are using to teach the student. We normally now we are on the way to change, rather than using sticks to students for those who are misbehaving. Now we are using a different approach to teach them.
Right.
So that maybe
Alpha, sorry to interrupt. All right. Really great stuff. Just hold off on what you're doing about it just for now. All right. Just stick with, so what you said is one of the challenges that you have are students kind of running off from classes that they don't like. The kind of fancy word for that we use is in-school truancy. So they're attending the school, but there's particular lessons that they disappear. Maybe go and hang out in the toilets or go around the back of a building and try and hide. What other types of misbehavior happens generally inside a class when the children are there?
We have some of the students also who are like, you can find them talking.
Alpha, do you mean that the misbehavior is that there are students talking when the teacher is talking?
Yes, when the teacher is talking.
Okay.
But also we have some of the students also who can I don't know how can I say it, but we have some who tend also to write like a piece of paper and they pass to another student, maybe the chatting when the teacher is in the class. So yes, we have also a such tendency of misbehavior to students.
Right. Thank you, sir. Okay. And Alpha, generally speaking, when we'll deal with the in-school truancy, the running off, as a separate issue, but typically in school, the teacher is talking to a class and a child is then talking probably to their friend about something. They're interrupting the teacher. What generally is the consequence? What happens to that child?
Normally now the consequences also depends on the situations or even a kind of the teacher, but we normally we punish them maybe after the lesson. You can meet them of the lesson, then maybe assign them to do a task. We have also a different kind of punishment. You can give alien to slash after the lessons.
Sorry, Alpha, you could give an area?
Yes, you can give the students an area outside the school to slash. Yes. But also,
sorry, Alpha, you'll need to forgive me. To slash, does that mean to like cut the grass?
Yes, cut the grass. But also sometimes we give them like you can assign them to write like maybe explaining what they are doing and what was the intention.
Okay, great, Alpha. Thank you so much. And what it sounds like, the third question with regards to systems, it sounds like in your school you've got a system of there's different consequences depending on the severity of the behavior.
Yes.
All right, so I imagine that in the school, if a child did something really bad, like they injured another child or they attacked a teacher or something like that, that there would be a very severe sanction like exclusion.
Yes, you're right, Phil. And when it happened to that, maybe depending on the severe of the problem, you can take a student or the student to the discipline teacher, and then now depending on the handling of the case, but if there will be a need, it can also the second master might be also involved in solving the case, and then later, if there's a need, also the head of school might be involved in the case, and then a parent might be also called to school.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you, Alpha. Brilliant. Okay. Let's come on my screen. It just happens to be the next one is Ezekiel. Ezekiel, in your experience, what types of misbehavior? You've heard what Alpha said. Is there anything that you want to add to what Alpha has said?
Yes, Phil, thank you. Yeah, actually, I have additional, I would say, kind of misbehaviors that always happen. And this is from my experience as a teacher. I have witnessed it in the classroom and even outside the classroom, but they are relating with the classroom conduct. I would say one of the misbehavior actually, and it is common, is the issue of slumbering, sleeping in the classroom while the teacher is teaching. You may find maybe 2 or 3, 5 students are sleeping in the classroom, while the teacher is teaching. So that is one. But second, even the issue of coming late in the classroom, you see, you may find that the teacher is already in the classroom and maybe started teaching for 5 to 10 minutes, and then you see a big number of students are coming, you see, while the teacher is teaching. And sometimes they don't even ask for entering to the class, they just enter in the class and sometimes making noise, that kind of misbehavior. Also, the issue of seriousness, I would say laziness in the classroom, and sometimes even reluctance to answer questions, or to do the pieces of assignments given by the teacher during the lesson. You may find maybe the teacher is asking question or want the students to be in groups and to do a piece of assignments and maybe make a presentation, in the class. Some of the students are reluctant. It is not because of maybe they are not able to do that kind of assignments, but it's because of misbehavior. They don't want to do, And another thing is the issue of joking, we have some of the students who tries to joke, even to mock teachers while the lesson is in progress. So and the issue of dodging, I think you already mentioned. Some of the students, they have that kind of behavior of dodging. They choose which lesson to attend. So that is and
any other, Ezekiel, any other additions you want to add on to the consequences? We've got after school tasks. We've got things like being assigned a section of grass to cut. Needing to write an explanation of their misconduct. Anything else you want to add to that list?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think I have something to add. And one of that, and which is very bad actually, and I'm even also the victim of that kind of consequences, is the issue of hating, or abandonment. Some of the teachers, because of that, they create hate. They do hate the students, and sometimes they even abandon. They stop coming, teaching them, And with that, it's like the students again misses what the lesson. And it can take a long time. It depends on the school system to deal with those issues. And even, and sometimes it can be in a form of silence, So the teacher may come in the classroom, but not teaching is required, So that kind of hate.
So wow. So the kind of punishment there is to the class, because if the teacher's just coming in being silent, or the teacher is abandoning the class, all of the children suffer. It's not just the 1 or 2 kids.
The stubborn ones.
And Ezekiel, can I just check? At the moment in Tanzania, in the law, are teachers allowed to hit students?
Actually not, because this is also even from the teaching professional code of conduct itself. because teachers have to regard the learners as their children. For instance, in these lower levels, let's say primary and secondary, teachers are like parents. Yes. So the issue of hating and abandoning the students is not allowed actually, but it happened. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's very interesting. Thank you. Let's go to Joanne. Joanne, are you able to add anything to what we've already heard in terms of the common types of misbehavior or the kind of consequences? Is there anything to add?
Hi, yeah. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Joanne.
Hi. Well, I came in a bit late. I wasn't able to hear the primary comments, but with regards to the other comments, first of all, I'd like to say we in Tanzania, kids are allowed to be smacked. I think it's like 3 canes or 4 canes, something like that. In excess of that is not allowed, but kids are allowed to be smacked. So I think when it comes to different private institutions where they actually say they do not agree with corporal punishment, that's where there's a difference. But like currently there's this video that's going viral where a student was excessively physically hit by a teacher. But teachers do have a tendency to cane students as a form of punishment in Tanzania. I don't know what it's like with the different teachers on this platform, but that thing is allowed. So, and then when it comes to different types of misbehavior, I think that also depends on the type of school, the area, and kids' different levels of like 1st grade, 2nd grade, up to 7th grade. The younger kids, I think it's normal naughtiness. When it gets to the higher levels, that's where you get truancy and kids being abusive to teachers. And then some of these differences, of course, I think backgrounds from where they come from. Abuse sometimes starts at home and then it manifests itself at school. So I think now interventions vary, I think. That's what I have to say in a nutshell.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joanne. Yeah, right. Well, thank you, guys. That we've got a really good comprehensive overview there. I'm going to go back to my presentation. Here we go. All right. So I've been making notes as we've been going through there. So one of the challenges, this isn't just in Tanzania, this is all over the world, we find, is that what tends to happen in schools is, right, we've got this type of misbehavior. We need to, keep on with the consequences, the school rules, how we work with the children. And often what happens is we keep on doing the same, expecting a different result, expecting behavior to really, really radically change, where it hasn't really changed over the last few years. Let's ignore COVID for the moment. But generally speaking, in schools, we're guilty of this kind of paradigm here, where we keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And you might be aware of that quote from Einstein saying to expect a different result from doing the same thing is insanity. All right. I have been very guilty in my career of just thinking that things will change if I keep doing the same thing, and it doesn't. And so what we find in many schools around the world is that schools pay a lot of attention and they invest a lot of resources into thinking up worse punishments for children. And I've been in schools where it's very, very imaginative, all right? And I've been in teacher meetings where they are putting their heads together to think about how they can make students' lives miserable by the types of punishment that they're giving. All right. And I just kind of reflected on that, and I thought, right, in terms of time and energy and resource, what's that all about? But I also think in the Tanzanian setting is that you are still, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, you're still in that time period where a lot of your teachers that are currently in your schools were teaching in a time in history when you were allowed to hit the children. Everyone was allowed to hit the children. And then times changed, the laws changed, and the government said, right, you're not allowed to hit children anymore. And the teachers have been in a state of flux, almost in a state of high stress, because the model that they were used to using to control behavior isn't available anymore. And so they find themselves trying to work out, right, what do we do now? And I've heard, even in Tanzania, I've heard teachers talk to me about this to say, the student behavior is worse because before the fear of the punishment of the stick would keep the class very, very well behaved. All right, so I hear that a lot. And so it's very, very interesting, I think, because when we look at research and when we look at psychology in terms of class behavior, there are various influences that impact on class behavior. All right, so you could say, well, society is influencing behavior because children are kind of, the parenting has got worse, parents aren't interested, or parents are having to work so hard that they're not there to supervise the children. And so there's a kind of breakdown in the family unit. There's a breakdown in children's behavior. There's a rise in gang involvement, gangs outside of school. And so that impacts on class behavior. All right. Then you've got things that are happening within the school, the curriculum, the types of teachers that are hired, the condition of the buildings. All of these things affect class behavior. But interestingly, when we talk to teachers about influences on behavior, 99% of them miss the biggest influence on class behavior. I wonder whether any of you could hazard a guess. What's the biggest influence on class behavior in a classroom? Any of you want to hazard a guess? Joanne?
Hi, sorry, I'm using a mic, so you might hear environmental noises, but I would think possibly, I would like to see the environment generally. I'm not able to pinpoint one thing, but I'd probably say the teacher, because they're supposed to have control of the entire classroom. So right. If a child is coming from a maybe antisocial background, if a child is having any kind of social issues, a teacher should be able to be in a position to detect it and suggest, or, I don't know, use whatever resources are available to them to now make interventions. So I'd say a teacher.
Okay, right. Joanne, you go to the top of the class. Yeah, me, the teacher. All right. In psychology, the person that we've got the biggest influence over is ourselves. All right. Now, the challenge with this is that there's a very human, universal bit of thinking, bit of behavior that happens that as a teacher, and actually this goes for any area of life, as humans, what we default to, what we like to do is to blame everyone else, okay? So this is happening because of them. This is happening because of them. Parents, other teachers, the head teacher, the government, all right? we naturally focus on it's other people that are causing the problem. And actually we miss out there, because the biggest influence I have on the children is me, and what happens to me, and what I am thinking, and what I am believing, because that affects my behavior, and it's my behavior that has a massive influence on class behavior. All right. And so what I want to kind of sum up by this slide is that for the rest of this session, what I'm wanting to focus on is much more about what can I change in me as a teacher beyond what can happen in the school or the region or the country, okay? Because we haven't got a lot of influence over that. But I can begin straight away in my classroom. I don't need to wait for my head teacher to change things. I can put into practice good things that can begin to influence my class right now. So we're going to spend some time looking at that. And it comes to this, all right? Your beliefs and expectations are key, all right? So one of the countries we work in is Lebanon. And in Lebanon, you know, there's a lot of refugees in Lebanon, and we work in refugee education. And quite often I hear teachers talking about refugees and their expectations of what the refugee can learn, what they can achieve, is much lower than an indigenous child. All right. And we kind of know, don't we, that actually that's not true. There's been amazing global thinkers and athletes and people in the business world that started off in a refugee camp. All right. But if I believe that refugee children are not as capable as indigenous children, that will affect how I behave with those children. All right. It's a natural consequence of that thinking. All right. If I'm in a school that I'm surrounded by private schools, and in my mind, if I think, all the good kids go to the private schools and we are left with the rest, that belief is going to affect my expectations of what these children are capable of. All right. So what we believe about our children in our classes and what we expect are inextricably linked. But also it goes deeper than that into our own core beliefs about how education should be. All right. So if I'm a teacher and my belief is that the most effective learning happens when the classroom is silent. All right. That's my belief. Silence equals good teaching. That's going to affect my expectations of what should happen in class. So when there's silence, I feel great. When there's not silence, it generates an emotional reaction because it's cutting across a belief, and that's going to generate my behavior in response to that. All right. And by the way, we know that a silent classroom does not necessarily, well, we know it doesn't equal the most effective learning. All right. So that's a big challenge for a lot of teachers. So friends, and if you're watching this on the recording, I'd love you to think about what your core beliefs are about students in your school. What are your expectations of what they're capable of, and what are you basing that on? But also, what are your beliefs around what makes a good classroom atmosphere? All right. Now, we haven't got time to go through that right now, but all roads lead back to that. So I'm going to leave you with that challenge to have a think through. And maybe on the WhatsApp group, you can send me some messages about what your beliefs are. That would be really interesting. Okay, so as a teacher, we have got some choices here, okay? For most of us, we tend to swerve towards the reactive part of teaching, okay? By that, what I mean is that, you know, like you've described, there's the talking across the teacher, there's the passing of notes, there's the lateness to class, there's the inappropriate jokes about the teacher in front of the teacher. So the event has happened, and as a teacher, we are reacting to that event by using those consequences, using those systems that we've got. And what I want to spend the rest of today on is actually suggesting that the best way of reducing student misconduct, misbehavior, is actually moving to the other side, to the proactive part. Because in our experience, working on that proactively reduces the incidence of misbehavior by about 75%. All right. It's a long road, but it's doable. So what do we mean? Okay. So part of being proactive is to deliberately look at our expectations about children, about us as teachers. And here's a list that a group of teachers came up with, which we thought was actually really healthy. So I wonder whether you agree with this. My role as a teacher is to set boundaries for the children, okay? Boundaries are needed because that's part of safety, and safety is the top priority for children, isn't it? All right. I expect that a child will test the boundaries. All right. That is absolutely normal childhood development. Okay. A child will understand that there's a boundary and they will test it to see, is this boundary real or fake? So they will test the boundaries. Next, children make mistakes. Isn't that same as adults? Yeah. So children making mistakes is normal, and actually it's healthy because part of childhood development is learning from your mistakes, isn't it? That's really healthy. All right. Next, as a teacher, my expectation is the children need help to experience achievement. All right. They might not get there by themselves. So as a teacher, I want to help them see that they've been successful. That caring means saying no and meaning no at the same time. All right. So I'm sure you've come across this, maybe in parenting, or you might have seen this, where a child is asking for something, asking for a treat, a sweet or something. And I want this. Can I have this? Can I have this? And the parent says no, but it's in a tone where the child's kind of understanding they've said no, but actually they kind of don't mean it. So I'll keep asking, and then they'll break and they'll give me the sweet. And that sometimes happens in class as well. So a teacher's no needs to be no. And then this last one is super important. There's always more to a child than the problems they present, okay? As teachers, we are very quick to label a child as a problem child. Oh, Miles, he's trouble, okay? And actually, there are reasons why for every behavior, there actually is a reason for that, and the child is more than that behavior. All right. So there's some expectations. So I'm very quickly going to come back to the team. All right. Just to get some feedback from you in terms of what are you thinking at the moment. We've looked at the biggest influence is you, the teacher, me, the teacher. We've looked at our beliefs and expectations, and we've talked there a little bit about what could be reasonable expectations that we've got as our role as teacher. What do you think about what we've just shared? Anyone want to share? Ezekiel.
Thank you very much, Phil, for your good presentation. Actually, you have spoken very important issues with relating with what the teacher should be and what the teacher, I think, should do for the learners. But one thing actually, and that is my reflection, for a long time, I have learned and come to realize that, for instance, in our context, the school itself, and here I mean including the teachers and the learners, it is a product of the community. For instance, with the issue of corporal punishment, you may find that the society is accepting and sometimes supporting it, So teachers are part of the community, and they come from the community. And again, the children, the learners are also coming from the community. You see, they are coming from homes where they are punished, sometimes severely, as a means of shaping them. And these teachers also are even parents, when they're outside of the school, they are also parents. And maybe they're treating their children the same as other community members are doing. So to me, it's like professionalism, which is acquired during the teaching training, sometimes is overshadowed, I don't know if it is the correct term, by the community, tradition, culture, practices, all those things. And because we have less, I would say, in service training, so in a long run, you find that teachers forget most of things that guides their professionalism, the ethics, the code of conduct, the pedagogy, the teacher-student relationship, all those things, So it's like they become ordinary people. They are still teachers, but they become ordinary people, much influenced and shaped by what is happening in the community.
Nice.
So yes, that is my reflection.
Right. Thank you, Ezekiel. That's interesting. Going to come back on that in a moment. Meanwhile, Alpha or Joanne, have you got anything that you want to add? Alpha.
Yeah, thank you, Phil, and my colleague for a good presentation. I am so happy for your presentation. I see it as a very important reminder for we teachers, because you have said a very important thing that some of the issues which happens in class, they're just a part of learning, and we teachers, we should not take much seriousness, because sometimes we bring fear even to the students. So we should also know that it's part of learning. But also the other thing which I would like also to add, the issue of we teachers, that now sometimes there are some misbehavior which we can avoid them by applying the best method of teaching. You have spoken a very important thing, that sometimes we teachers, we are very reluctant to change even the method of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, you have visited Tanzania or Africa, most of the teachers are still using the teacher-centered approach. And the method has got also a lot of problem because of time and the technological changes.
Yeah.
So, for example, if we use maybe a group discussion where the students are in pair discussing a certain thing, you might avoid some of the misbehavior that you could not maybe using the teacher-centered approach.
Yeah.
So that's also a very important thing. So we teachers, the system, however, there are some of the mistakes that might be happening in the school. Now, some of the mistakes might not be solved because of the leadership. If maybe a teacher reports some of the issues which maybe is threatening the class, and if the authority is not taking actions, that might demoralize even the teacher who has presented the case.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No,
That's my contribution.
Thanks, Alpha. Yes, it is demoralizing when, as a teacher, you know, you've been abused by a child and you go and talk to your leaders about it and nothing really happens. That really is not good at all. All right. Yeah. Okay. So because of time, guys, we're going to kind of wrap things up there. A couple of things to say. First of all, our next session regrettably cannot be in February because I am actually traveling for the whole of February. But I'll liaise with Janet about when in March we can have our next one. And the one that we have in March will be the part 2 of this. All right. So we haven't finished with student behavior. We've just started. Next session is going to be some really practical steps about what we can do in the classroom that's going to help reduce misbehavior, that we can just get on with ourselves. We don't need leadership involvement, etc., because it's a change in thinking. All right. So that's the first thing to say. The second thing, Ezekiel, is coming back to your point. I want to finish with this story in that I believed for a long time, you know, I was in a school in a deprived area of London, lots of gangs, drugs, violence, you know, all sorts of things. And for a long time, I did think, hey, what chance have we got as a school when these children are leaving school and every day going home into these really terrible home situations? How can we possibly hope to change things? But I now understand that actually, you know, one of the things you mentioned there, Ezekiel, was about culture. And one of the amazing things that we found at my school, and we found across the world as well in schools where we work, is that even in a tough community, a tough culture, a school led well can create its own culture that is counter to the culture around it. All right. So you don't have to bend to the culture of the community around you. As a school, I think you've got a pretty unique opportunity to create an oasis in that community, somewhere where things here are different. How we talk to children is different. How we behave with children, how we present our children is different to where they're going to each night. And we've seen children being able to adapt. They know they're going home to abuse, but they come to school knowing here in these 6 hours or whatever I'm in school, I've got a different life and a chance to do something significant to change the future of my life. And really quickly, I'm going to give you 2 examples of that. They're both in Brazil because that's where I've got most experience. So one school in Rio de Janeiro, they were in a neighborhood where it was a war zone. It was completely controlled by drug gangs. All the children at the school were either children of drug traffickers or prostitutes. Okay. Terrible home lives, crime, bullets, weapons. That was their daily diet out in the community. All right. But this school in the middle of this community started to adapt its practice and radically changed those children's lives. So we started working with them, gosh, it'll be 8 years ago now. And since they changed how they approach children, not a single girl during their school life has become pregnant, and not a single boy has been lost to being recruited into a gang. All right. So they have gone against the trend where basically girls get pregnant because that's how they ensure their security, and boys go into gangs because that's how they ensure their security. That hasn't happened. So I want to give you hope that no matter, and you almost couldn't get a worse community culture than that. So if it can happen there, it can happen where you are. The second one, so the first one was a primary school. The second one is a secondary school where when this head teacher arrived at the school, the drug traffickers came into the school, onto the playground, the yard, at break time and at lunchtime, and were trading drugs on the school premises. All right. So absolute horror to inherit. But that leader, she went through our training and she began to make changes in the school, and the lives of those children began to change radically. And a lot of the drug traffickers were parents of the children in the school, and they suddenly found themselves thinking, wow, my child is now getting a type of schooling that I didn't get. They're going to get opportunities that I never had. I now want to support the school. So this will sound kind of crazy to you, I'm sure, but now rather than them bringing drugs onto the school and dealing with the children, they protect the school and ensure that no unsavory elements go into the school, because they want their children to come out differently. And they believe because the school has changed its ways, there is hope. All right. So I want you to take away with you that whatever your situation, whatever challenging types of behavior you have, there is hope. So we're just going to finish now just with, I'm going to come to the three of you, asking you the same question. From everything that we've talked about today, what has been the biggest impact for you? Or what's been the biggest question that you've got, or the biggest observation that you've got? So Joanne, we're gonna come to you first, if that's okay. So from everything that we talked about today, the thing that maybe has impacted you, or you've got questions of, or you've kind of perceived, what have you got to say?
I don't have much to say. I'm just glad that some of these things have been pointed out in different schools. But I just wanted to say, I think, again, for the person that pointed out issues of culture, I think when it comes to the Tanzanian context, it's a good initiative, this platform, and I'm glad a lot of teachers have actually been able to say the challenges that they face. So with Tanzania, I think the curriculum is a problem, but also when it comes to culture, teachers have got to be able to invest in themselves. And I think primarily an individual has to ask themselves why they've chosen to become a teacher. And I think that will help a lot, because when you're a teacher, you actually encounter so many kinds of students, families, environments, curriculum, syllabuses. So taking on board, like what you said, this tough backgrounds, truants and gangs and all that kind of stuff. So, a teacher, the reason that you've chosen to become a teacher, I think, and you investing in yourself constantly, I think will go a long way in helping an individual. Okay,
good, great observation, Joanne, and I totally agree with you. All right, let's go to Ezekiel. What are you thinking, Ezekiel?
Yeah, thank you very much, Phil. Actually, I was very much impressed by the fact and the emphasis that the teacher is the key actor. That is very important to understand and to know. But with that is like on the other side, and that is the negative side, has been misused by teachers.
Yeah.
So instead of taking it positively, you find that teachers again are misusing that role, you know,
Yes.
and with that, it has become a very big challenge, and it is also difficult to make changes. And I think it is important for the teachers to understand that. And again, it is the issue of, and that is actually from my experience, is the issue of preparation. For instance, Alpha has mentioned one thing. We are now in a paradigm shift, you know, from what we used to call it knowledge-based to competence-based.
Yes.
But the thing is, it's like these key actors, the teachers, the implementers, you know, those who are dealing with the students on the day-to-day basis are not even well prepared. So it becomes very difficult actually for them to change.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's that what we talked about, that the biggest influence is me, but actually I need to be motivated to work on me, and I need to be supported and encouraged to work on me. You know, no man is an island. And the danger that we all have in schools is that as a classroom teacher, you become isolated in your classroom. And you stay in your classroom, or you go to different classrooms where you're teaching, and you have lunch break, but you're not really talking about professional things at lunchtime. All right.
Sure.
And so there's no system in place of deliberate encouragement and professional development. And part of you being part of Pixel International Network is that's what we're here to inspire and co-create, is that here we've got a network where you don't feel alone. You feel that you can share things, you feel that you can learn things from each other, and then have the courage to begin to have those conversations back in your schools and networks where you come from. All right. So thank you. Alpha, final words with you.
Thank you so much. Phil, I'm not very much far from my colleagues. What I would like to add is, despite the fact the students are coming from different families and different backgrounds, teachers are in a better position to manage the student misbehavior in a class and outside the class. That is what I would like to say.
Yeah. And I guess sort of timed in with what Ezekiel was saying, that's at the crux of this, isn't it? Because as a teacher, you've got the power to positively influence, but also you've got the power to negatively influence as well. And
yes.
Which pathway you choose as a teacher, well, that's a whole new topic that might be another discussion sometime. All right. So Janet, any reflections from you before we head off?
Only that was incredibly interesting and very inspiring. So thank you so much, Phil, and also everyone else for their comments. And we look forward to the second part. So thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So thanks ever so much, everyone. Remember that WhatsApp group is designed to be used to ask questions, to give comments about educational matters, not about other stuff. All right. So feel free to share that you found this useful with your colleagues. It will be available. Janet will post a link in time and encourage them to go on this journey with you. So thanks so much for your participation, your time, your care, your hearts. We'll carry on walking together. All right. Have a good rest of the week. All right. Take care.